Well, thank you very much. I hope you had a great morning session. It was great ideas, insights from everyone. So today and this afternoon after lunch, we're going to have our advocacy session. And first of all, when I introduce our great panelists, and myself as well, my name is Herman Suarez. I'm the supervisor of world languages in Cobb County Schools. And part of the job that we do as supervisors is always advocating for our programs. And depending on different situations, not only do it with our teachers and our schools and administrators, but also outside with partners like you. So today the goal is to see how can we get ideas and work together, collaborate to better promote our programs. You know, we're all working always on, you know, like in our district, and then when we connect and work with the state, we expand our level of influence as well. So as you do that, we hope that today you'll get ideas on different projects, you'll get connections as well as we move forward to support our programs. So with that, we're going to let our panelists introduce themselves. So if you'll talk a little bit about yourself, your scope in terms of what you do, and also how would you define advocacy?
All right, so my name is Patrick Wallace. I have the honor of serving as the program specialist for world languages and global workforce initiatives. I never want to leave that out at the DOE. Basically, I'm a support person for all of you, the world language community and dual language immersion community here in Georgia. And regarding advocacy, what is advocacy? I think advocacy is what we do every day. It's not got a time period on it. It's not limited. I mean, I've learned that everything I do is advocacy related. So I'll talk about that in more detail, but every level of what we do is advocacy related. We are who we are. Our heart is who we are. We cannot contain advocacy because we passionately do what we do and believe in what we're doing. So advocacy, we live it.
Oh yeah, Victoria. So now we have Dr. Victoria Russell. She is joining us from virtually from Zoom. Dr. Victoria.
Yes, from Valdosta, Georgia, where I teach at Valdosta State University. I'm a professor of Spanish and foreign language education. I'm also the immediate past president of ACTFL. It was formerly known as the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, but we just go by ACTFL now. And it's an organization that it's all about advocacy. I'm going to be talking to you specifically today about the work that we're doing at my campus, Valdosta State University, and the very important work that we're doing at ACTFL to recruit, retain, and support world language educators. We have a massive teacher shortage, and we need to address that so that we can keep languages thriving in our state, in our country, and around the world. I'm very delighted to be with you today.
Thank you, Victoria. And now, Jamie Patterson.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Jamie Patterson, and like Patrick, I have the great honor of being a program specialist for world languages. I work for Fulton County Schools, which is north and south of everybody else who's kind of in the middle. We have 41 middle schools and high schools where we offer French and Spanish in all grade levels at a minimum, and then 6 other languages sprinkled around the district. I have been a French teacher and a Spanish teacher for many years, and now have come to love supporting other teachers. And I served with FLAG. Many of you are familiar with the Foreign Language Association of Georgia. I was on the FLAG board for a dozen or so years, about half that time as the vice president for advocacy, and so had opportunities to travel to DC and work with Jay and CL Nicholas, also obviously advocating at the state level and certainly in my district. And so what is advocacy for me? So I'm a word nerd. I'm just going to admit that now. I studied Latin in high school for 3 years and was fascinated by Latin. And so if you look at the word advocacy, it's quite simple. You are just lending a voice to something. And so we need to lend our voices to what we are passionate about, whether it is about ourselves, our families, our communities, our students, our languages. And so advocacy for me, kind of like what Patrick said, is kind of everything we lend a voice to every part of everything that we do in world languages education, and that is definitely my passion. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jamie. So we're going to follow the same format we had this morning in terms of questions. And as you think of your questions as well, that we're going to have at the end, think of the different levels of the panelists. So we have state level in terms of looking at world languages, district level, obviously former teachers as well. We have National Organization for Language, State Organization for Language. So really look at the different aspects in terms of thinking of the questions and ideas that we will share today. So we're going to start first with Victoria. In terms of looking at the national organization, ACFL, how does ACFL advocate for teachers and language programs?
Victoria.
Sorry, I had to get myself unmuted. ACFL does so much to advocate for language programs, students, and teachers that I could spend all day. So what I have done is I've just sort of selected a few things to talk about, but I invite everyone to visit the ACFL website, to become a member, because this organization does so much to support our profession. Recently, they have started the Lead with Languages Foundation, and the purpose of the Lead with Languages Foundation is to really help support with advocacy, to provide scholarships for people who are going into the language profession, to provide support for research and grants for language programs, and also to educate the public about the value of learning languages. Now, some of the programs that might be of interest to the people here in this room today, one is the Educators Rising program. This is a free program. It's 10 online modules where you can take your students through these modules to help them think about possibly having a career, a future career as a language educator. Now, the modules are available now in English, Spanish, French, and Arabic, and ACFL is trying to continue to add more languages. So for your advanced language students, you can take them through these modules in the target language, so they're getting target language practice as they explore the possibility of becoming a language teacher. Our former executive director, Marty Abbott, thinks that the best time to target students is when they're in middle school. She said that middle school students are beginning to envision themselves in their future careers and professions. So those of you who are teaching middle school, high school, take your students through the Educators Rising program. If you go to the ACFL website, it's just acfl.org, and you type in Educators Rising, you'll have access to all the free resources and materials that are available there. Another thing that I'm very passionate about is the mentoring program. We know that in the first 5 years, many teachers leave the profession, and we need to support them. And so ACFL does this. We offer 3 different versions of a mentoring program. One is the traditional mentoring program for teachers who are in their first few years of teaching. And the signups will be coming out very soon in May. So when you look on the ACFL website, starting in May, they'll give some information about how to join the mentoring program, whether you want to be a mentor or as a mentee. And they pair up people with similar, the same language that they teach, and they try to pair people up with the same level. And ACFL provides some textbooks and resources where you can work through with your mentor on learning more about the profession, how to stay engaged, how to stay excited and passionate about teaching your language. Also, the mentees have a seasoned professional whom they can rely on for help and support. That's the traditional mentoring program. We also have the online mentoring program, and we have one for teachers who are teaching in the hybrid mode, which is happening more and more, even at the high school level. So I encourage all of you to get involved with that. If you've been teaching for a long time and you're really passionate, please register to become a mentor. If you're a new teacher, you should sign up to become a mentee because you'll have a lot of support and resources from ACFL. The Lead with Languages scholarships are now out for your students to apply for. They give out 10 $1,500 scholarships per year, and we're hoping to grow those as the Language Connects Foundation gets off the ground. We just launched it in November, so as donations come in, we'll be able to offer more scholarships to students. But the Lead with Languages scholarships, it's $1,500 that's renewable for 4 years. So students can then earn $6,000 towards their study if they are in a language teacher education program. And so I encourage you, all of your students who are high school seniors to apply for the Lead with Languages scholarship. So I'll turn it over to another panelist. I've given you some ideas about what ACTFL does, and as we go on, I can hopefully give you some further information about the ACTFL resources and programs that are available for world language educators.
Thank you, Victoria. And that definitely is a key element for the programs, recruitment and retention. So we can definitely start early. So those are great resources. Well, now we're going to turn now to the state level in terms of looking at, programs not only in the metro area, but, throughout the state and what initiatives are there. So at the state level, Patrick, will you share with us, what is going on at the state level in terms of advocacy and language programs?
Sure. I think it's really great. It's really important, all the partners in the process for advocacy. I often say at the state level, I'm still a government institution. So I'm aware of some of the manacles that I have. I say manacles, but you're a state employee basically. So I can't talk directly to legislators, for example. There are certain lines I cannot cross. But I think like teachers, our advocacy is what we do every day. And I think when I think about advocacy, it's about telling our story, but also telling about the positive, making sure that the public, advocacy, we all get it. We don't have to we do have to advocate for each other, and encourage each other. I think that is a form of advocacy as well, supporting one another as teachers. But we also have to reach outside our community. So thinking about reaching outside our community, we have to think about what stories we can tell, what programs that we can build that connect what we do with other parts of the community that may not be thinking about world language, but when you make it meaningful for them, it does, and when it resonates. And recently I've been doing a lot of work in our rural communities and really making those connections, global connections for rural schools. So I think the biggest advocacy that we can do is it's important to network and find out where are the nodes that kind of control or can communicate. For example, the Rural Office of Education and Innovation. There are different already structures in place. You find those lighthouse programs as well. So I think it's about highlighting programs and then for me, it's about putting gas in the tank of teachers who advocate already. I mean, when I think about people like Shannon Borum who are creating this small town and rural language teachers forum, embracing that, connecting with that, and then putting some fuel in that, or Joanna and her symposium that she started holding, or I could go around the room looking at faces or people who are consulting. I think we are all advocates in what we do. At the state level, I would just say that we have won so many friends, honestly. Part of that is also our connections with culture, the Atlanta Global Studies Center, all of these entities that are out there already engaged in language. So find out about those entities, find out how to connect with them and support them, because by supporting them, you are advocating for your programs. We need to support one another. We need to find those entities in the state that are, supportive of what we're doing. And I think we tell our story. And I think I always say with advocacy, I really feel like I've always made that analogy, like if we go to the end of the story, we win. It's just the rest of society has to get there in their own way. So yes, there's a lot of things but I mean, our world of world language is going to rise in importance. Linguistic and intercultural skills is just going to continue to rise in importance. There are economic, societal, diplomatic, even security reasons for all of that. So I think it's just about making sure that we reach outside our community and we tell our story in a way that resonates in a positive way. I have always tried to be positive. We always try to just highlight the positives that are going on. Because we can all be negative, and nobody, we want to be, I think it's essential to be positive in your space, whatever that is. We all have are things like, man, I wish my job was this, or man, those teenagers were hard in fifth period today because it was after lunch or whatever. I mean, I remember those days, but I also remember doing a lot of things I never got paid for in the classroom, to be honest with you. But that really made the difference for me getting support when I was in school, you know. So I think, and just finding out, you got to be a little savvy, because a lot of times advocacy is not clearly written. If you would do this, Patrick, we would support you. They never give you a note that says that, but they just kind of hint at it. You kind of have to feel for it. You know what I mean? There's a feeling for advocacy. You got to feel where, I always say, be like water, you know. Obstacles are not hard and fast. It just means you can't go that way. But it doesn't mean you can't go that direction. You just can't go that way in that direction. So you don't treat obstacles like a hard and fast stop. If you do, they win. So don't let obstacles deter you. Many of you are passionate. I think about your stories. You know, if you think about the obstacles you face, and if you let those obstacles stop you, where would you be today, right? So obstacles come in different personal ways, like physical disabilities or other things. So just remember, advocacy is positive. It doesn't take no for an answer. And it doesn't, it's in everything we do. You know, you go to the supermarket. Oh, it's Mr. So-and-so. He's my blah, blah, blah teacher. Suddenly it's a point for advocacy. I know you're like, oh my God, they noticed me. But it's like, I got to stop shopping here. I got to go 20 miles later over here. No, but that's an opportunity, right? So you kind of like, yeah, oh, hey, how's it going? I would always call them by their journal. I'd like, hello, Olaf, good to see you, you know. I'm like, oh, I just thought that was hilarious. But you know what I mean? Advocacy is in the small moments, in the big moments, and it's at all levels.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm pretty sure that probably some great stories came to mind of your students in your classrooms. Definitely came to me. Well, one of the great resources we have from the state is the Seal of Biliteracy. So now, in terms of the state, Jamie, how do national efforts and state efforts like the Seal of Biliteracy help promote world languages, you know, at the district level, and what can teachers do to help promote those efforts?
Thank you for asking that. So teachers are at the front line of advocacy. There is no doubt. Advocacy at the local school level is critical. And years ago, just very quickly, when I came to Fulton County Schools as a teacher, I taught elementary school, and after 3 years, that program was cut because of budget. And I was fortunate enough to get a middle school position, did that for several years, then high school, then central office. So at any rate, I was, and 82 other elementary world languages teachers in the district were very sad about the cut. Obviously, I was on the flag board by that time. And so I wrote an article for our journal about how world languages advocacy can save jobs. And it absolutely can. So when I was teaching at the middle school level, I had wonderful, wonderful colleagues who understood the power of advocacy at the very granular level, and I have continued to push it. So, for example, think about your stakeholders as a world languages teacher. It's not just your students. It is your parents. It is your local school administrators. It is your department colleagues. It is your school colleagues. It is your community. It is your city. Everyone is involved. So how can you touch each of those people with advocacy? Lots and lots of different ways, but I'll give you a couple of examples. Students present information and content that is relevant to them, not you. I could have taught 17th century French literature and loved it forever, Molière, right? No, they don't care. You need to teach them what is engaging and relevant to them. And it's not hard to do. Language is a thing that touches every content in every way at every level, and you just have to find a way to do it. And they need to have fun. If kids are not having fun, they're not going to like your class. And if you are keeping them engaged and they're having fun, then they love you. And that's one of the best ways to advocate for your program, because kids don't choose languages in a building, they choose teachers. Everybody knows this, right? We did. They still do. And so I was at a middle school, right? So I had the littles, and semi-littles. But this is just very true for students. And then parents. I tell my teachers every year, within the first 10 days of school, send a positive message to your parents. I am so glad school's back in session. I love teaching French. I love your kids. It might be too soon for the L word, but we are having a great time, you know. And just a positive message. And then in another couple of weeks, pick out a handful of kids who've done a great job and blind copy those parents and say, I'm just sending you a quick email because little Johnny did such a superb job today. Oh my gosh, loving this kid. Thank you for your support. Done, right? Teachers must take time to send, as Patrick said, positive messages to students and parents. That is grassroots advocacy, and it is critical. You have to do the same thing. And if you do those things, guess who looks good? Your principal. Oh, is he happy? Yes, very happy. And then you post student work in the hallways outside your classroom next to the rubrics and the standards. So you can show everyone who walks in the building what your students are doing and what they're learning. And then you make little name tags for pencil sharpeners and light switches and blackboards and all of that, and you put them in every classroom in the building so that your kids are speaking your language outside and they're speaking it in science class and math class. And you put the words for the mathematical symbols, and you put the terms for the periodic table, and you just cover your school with language until everybody knows in the building that languages are taught in that school. That's grassroots advocacy, and it is critical. And then you take your students to retirement homes and sing Christmas carols, and then you take them to public parks, put up a sign, and you clean up trash. And there's many things that teachers can do to advocate for their language and grow the language. And I just think that it is so important to do these small things. You think about national level advocacy, and you think about legislation, and you think about all of this stuff. Great. I'm glad that there's a lot of great people working on that, because that's needed. But if you really want to build something from the ground up, I think it's this grassroots advocacy that is your first line of defense.
Yeah, I think that's a great point in terms of looking at what is your sphere of influence and who do you have contact with that you can work with to promote languages. Thank you, Jamie. Now I have a question for all of you, and Jamie touched a little bit about it in terms of the, what are the career options for students? What do we do with languages? I mean, Sandra mentioned that earlier as well in terms of how do we apply languages within the classroom and in the future as well. So with that in mind, what are some academic careers, and this is for everyone, what are some academic careers or pathways that open up for students when they have a high level of language proficiency, and how teachers or schools can best promote these careers for the students? So it's for anyone who wants to start.
I'll go ahead and start on that one. So we're fortunate enough in Fulton County Schools to have what we call Workplace Spanish class. It is a senior level class. We have it in one high school out of our 21 high schools. I'm working tirelessly to try to spread the program. We collaborate with CTAE and use their federal funds to give our students language testing, OPI, WPT. We're the only program actually in the country that's been certified by CCHI, which is the Certification Commission for Healthcare Interpreting. And so what we're doing is we're trying to prepare heritage speakers beginning in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So by 12th grade, they're in their 7th year of language studies, having taken Spanish for native speakers for that 3-year pathway, then AP Lang, then AP Lit, then Workplace Spanish, and testing them to get their level. If they're 18 before they graduate, we can actually pay for their national testing through CCHI. We have partnerships with Emory and Wellstar Hospital so that they can do some shadowing of certified medical interpreters in the workplace. This is such a busy program. It's a wonderful opportunity, and this obviously is for kids who are developing advanced language and literacy skills. But aside from that, I just had to give a plug for that program because I'm so proud of it. The teacher and students work so hard. But aside of that, I think what's really important is that students understand that they do not have to have advanced language skills in order to use their language in a career field. ACTFL, as a matter of fact, in 2015 published a document, Oral Proficiency in the Workplace. And it's blue, green, and orange, just like everything that has to do with proficiency. And it tells you levels of language proficiency and what jobs that those equate to. And so students can see that they do not have to have advanced literacy skills in order to work in retail, for example, or social services, or many different jobs that are listed. So there's research, all kinds of ACTFL research. I'll leave most of that for Victoria, but there's quite a need for language proficiency in the workforce, and I know Victoria can tell you all of those numbers.
if Victoria will allow me, I'll go ahead and say a few words and then let her follow up, because I know that she has some great things as well. I think about this, of course, there are programs at the state that are built for advocacy. I think about the Seal of Biliteracy, our international skills diplomacy programs. Those are avenues for you to advocate for as well. And in my conversations, what I hear resonating more and more, and to be honest, where the direction more and more I believe that we need to head, is to connect languages with careers, connect languages with the workforce in a real meaningful way. So looking at the different CTAE pathways, how can we connect what languages offer for those different pathways, what pathways like interpreting and translating are not there yet that need to be. But there is, as I've said before, there's partners in that. Some of that work has to proceed outside of us in that community to standardize some of those tests to make it possible in some ways. But still, I think that is one way to do it. And then I also think about my experience as a teacher. You know, guest speakers is one way you can start to connect your curriculum with outside. I remember I had someone who was in the field of logistics come into my classroom in Germany, and he worked for Kuehne Nagel, which is a big German logistics company, and he talked about the freight, and it just blew my mind that there was so much work being done in logistics. They didn't really, some things that I advocate for with people in general, these are things that you could advocate for, like just talking about Georgia's global climate. I mean, some of it is also just the communities that we have here, the growing diversity that is in the United States, that you can use census data for, other things like that, I think. But having real people come in is always the most powerful thing. So there might be speakers, maybe even in your parent community, that have some ability to speak to some topic or bring in some kind of global component. I think that's the beauty of languages, guys. The world is our oyster, you know what I mean? We're not just relegated to math symbols or science equations. You know, we can do it all. Language is the communicative piece for it all. So I always really relished the thought that I was a world language teacher, because really I could do anything. I could talk about German structure of the language, but I could talk about German culture, but I could also talk about global culture. And how is that? I mean, the USDGs, United Nations sustainability goals, connecting with those and talking about how, I mean, we just went through a pandemic, for crying out loud. I mean, it was global medical emergency, was it not? We've got crises in Europe right now, you know. So I mean, I think, and we've even got issues here at home. So the issues are out there for sure. So we need to connect with that, and we just need to, like I said, I think for me, when I was another thing I did just as a teacher, and I think it's something too that's powerful. Advocacy is connected to what you do with the workforce around you, like with the companies around you, bringing in local companies that somehow have some kind of global footprint that is right next door, but the kids have no idea, you know what I mean? Or just talking, or maybe it's even just a quick, you should consider, like in your lesson, devoting, like, I don't know, it's something regular, like where you just look at some global company that's in Georgia. Let's talk about this. Just connect and making sure it's like fun, like a part of your instruction. Yes, you're doing the language. Yes, you're doing culture, but also kind of stress these economic connections as well, so it's meaningful. Jobs, this is connected to jobs. This is, put it on your resume every day, you know. We know, but we need to do a better job of communicating just how powerful a linguistic proficiency is and cultural proficiency is in the workplace. I mean, go to Home Depot's Spanish site. Just take them there. Or, hey, how many of you shop on Amazon? You know, there is a German Amazon. Let's go look, you know. I think internet, wow. YouTube videos. Man, I was so happy when the school allowed me to actually show a YouTube. I remember that time. Y'all are like, I use YouTube videos. I remember they were banned. Remember that? So, I mean, when that got available, it's like, oh, wow. All right. Sorry, Victoria.
That's fine. I love it. And I'm hoping that I can kind of piggyback off of what you all are saying and show you what we're doing in higher education. So at Valdosta State University, we have a Spanish for Professionals program. And we have several tracks. We have healthcare, and then they are going out into every one of those courses has an experiential learning component. So they're going to the farm workers clinic and they're shadowing the medical professionals, learning the professional jargon and terminology. We have a criminal justice track. We have a business track and an education track. And any of these majors, these are wide majors, big fields, they can study language and learn the professional jargon so that they could be more attractive when they want to go and get a job. And they only need to have completed, I'm a Spanish teacher, so they only need to have completed through the intermediate level. So once they finish our Spanish 2002, which is our 4th semester, then they can begin their Spanish for Professionals coursework. And what's so attractive to many students, a minor is 18 credits, so we're only talking about 3 classes past the 2002 level, and they are getting that professional knowledge in their field, and they're getting a stamp on their diploma saying that they have a certificate in Spanish for Professionals. And that's very attractive to students to have something tangible that they can put on their resumes. Another thing that I do to advocate for languages, both in our high schools and on our campus, is to tell students about the Gilman Scholarship. This is federal funding for students who are on financial aid, and they can apply from their senior year in high school if they know where they're going to college and they know they're going to be receiving a Pell Grant. We at Valdosta State, the majority of our students are first-generation college students on federal financial aid, and they are eligible as long as they're U.S. citizens and they're enrolled in an undergraduate program, and students can win up to $5,000. So over the years, I learned about the program in 2011, 2012, I had my first winner. Since then, I've helped students win almost $200,000 to study abroad with my program in Spain. We go for 5 weeks, they study at a Spanish university. Well, guess what happens when they come back? They start changing their majors to Spanish, or they're minoring in Spanish. And they're all excited because they are just not learning about the language from a book, they're living the language and the culture. So I strongly encourage teachers. There are many programs as well for high school students where you can bring your students abroad and let them experience what it's like to live in another place. And they learn something called intercultural communicative competence. And that is not just understanding another culture and the perspective of another culture, but it's learning to see what your culture looks like from the perspective of another culture. So when my students get to Spain, they can see how the United States is portrayed in the news, the media. They see the influence that the U.S. has on film industry, on music, and it's really life-changing for the students. And when they come back with a renewed passion for their language study, and they also come back with a renewed sense of self-confidence, that they know that they can live in another country and thrive, and it just gives them the confidence to really stay in college. Research has shown, we've done several studies with students on our own campus, that when students study abroad, their grade point average goes up, and we have much higher retention rates among students, especially among our first-generation students. So advocating for language study through the Gilman Scholarship, I'm constantly talking to students across our colleges to get them enrolled in our Spanish for Professionals program and encouraging them. And every student that I teach, I ask them, even from the beginning levels, have you thought about majoring or minoring in Spanish? That's what I teach. And of course, we teach many languages, and all of the professors at our university do the same thing. Get them thinking about it from the first day. So those are some of the things that we're doing to advocate for languages. And while Jamie was talking about that, what proficiency level is needed for the various jobs, I went ahead and pulled that up. They don't give like hard figures about the percentage of students that are in these fields, but to be like a firefighter that has enough proficiency to interact with people in a second language, you only need intermediate mid to intermediate high to work in aviation, the auto industry. Listed here are missionaries, tour guides. At the advanced low level, of course, K through 12 language teachers, nurses, social workers, police officers, administrators, many professions are listed here. And on a personal level, My younger son is a medical doctor. He was in medical school during the pandemic in New York City. They had to set up hospitals, like tent hospitals out in Central Park so they could treat all the people who needed treatment. And he speaks fluently Spanish and French. And of course, being in New York City, there's a large population of Spanish speakers. There's many people from Puerto Rico and also Haitian speakers. And my son tells me when he is able to communicate with them and they're in a life-threatening situation and they're afraid, having a healthcare worker speak to them in their first language it's so incredibly helpful because it puts the patient at ease. And that person has a deeper understanding of their condition because that the doctor can explain it in their first language. They don't have to wait for a translator. My son is able just to communicate directly instead of having to wait for translators. So it's a wonderful addition to whatever career that students want to pursue. So I'll stop there. I think I've said quite enough there.
But that's a great point in terms of looking at, how does the university level contribute to advocacy in terms of looking at, in this case, traveling. That can happen at the, high school, middle school level as well in terms of exploring the community. So that community service part is really important. And that actually takes us to another point, which is, I know Jamie districts in the state, we looking at retention and recruitment. There are other avenues as well to become a teacher. So another point of advocacy is how do we get people who want to and encourage to maybe teach the language that have other fields get into a teaching position. So Jamie, at the district level, what ideas and how do you advocate for recruiting teachers and what options are there? I know that both Victoria and Patrick have some put out as well in terms of options for them to get into teaching.
Yes, so at the district level, I'm not directly involved with hiring teachers. However, most principals, when they have a world languages vacancy, will reach out to me and to say, Jamie, I need 3 Spanish teachers, or I need whatever. And so over the years, and really a lot of it is through networking, collaboration with my peers, with the state. We're not averse to taking teachers from one district to the other. We share teachers year after year regularly. So one opportunity which is available statewide is through the GAPSC, who will allow teachers with a college degree of any kind and proven language proficiency to be permitted as a teacher. So they do not have to have earned a degree in a language as long as they have a degree and they can score a minimum of advanced low on the OPI and the WPT. They're eligible to work as a permitted teacher, which carries the same pay, the same benefits, everything as a certified teacher, but then they have a few requirements that they have to fulfill over the next 3 years. And of course, they have to do all of the basic, things. So at any rate, Patrick's very good about always having a GAPSC representative at the job fairs that we do, and we make all of the candidates aware of that. Otherwise, in our database of teachers in the district, we have the option of searching by language. This is one way that I found a French teacher who was a native French teacher from Togo, who was teaching elementary school. She was actually a parapro in an elementary school, and we found her. She's now teaching French at one of our high schools because I reached out to her and explained to her that she could be a French teacher. She had no idea that she just had to test her language. She had a degree and that she could teach. And so that's another way. We just search our database and look for language. I also reach out to all of my world languages teachers and just tell them, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell everyone who speaks your language, or everyone that that we have positions available for teachers. Parapros, we're moving 3 parapros from different positions in the district up to Spanish teaching positions because they are qualified other than not having this degree in a language. And it's just a lack of knowledge. So it's constantly about talking and spreading the news and networking and collaborating, and continue to speak with your department chairs and make sure that you build their capacity to understand the pathways to become teachers so that they can reach out through their network. So those are just a few of the things that I do to try to find teachers.
Can I just piggyback onto that? Because I would like to talk about very quickly, because I know we're running short on time. At Valdosta State University, we have an online master's program. So it's an MAT and we have it in foreign language education for Spanish, French, and also for English for speakers of other languages. Where teachers, they can keep teaching, like Jamie said, on their permit. We have teachers from all over Georgia that are on temporary certificates or permits, and they can stay in their classrooms, and all of our classes are online. And we have synchronous classes in the evening for their field experiences. They're using their own students in their own classroom, and they're also working with the North Carolina Virtual Public School to learn about online teaching and having virtual experiences. And our teacher candidates say that it's very helpful for them to have the support to learn the methodology, because they come from different fields. Like Jamie said, they got degrees in different areas, and they have the knowledge of the language, but they don't know how to teach it. So while they're getting their certification, they're getting the support from us so that they're learning classroom management, they're learning effective methodologies for language teaching. So I'm going to pass it back over to Patrick, but I just wanted to mention that because I think that's so important to have opportunities for people. They've got a degree, they know they have to go back and take courses, so they want to get a master's degree out of it as well. So they graduate with their master's degree, that's a higher pay, and their certification. So I just wanted to throw that out there because anyone is on a temporary certificate and needs to get certified.
This is an evolving story, but I'll tell you, we are doing a lot in Georgia. I feel like we've come a long way, baby, you know? Well, we're not there yet, but we have come a long way, and I think that you see a lot of districts doing things internally to identify future teachers and kind of create pathways for them within their districts. You also see a lot of reaching out to heritage-speaking communities, I think. That's something we've been trying to be intentional about. I remember when I first came to the DOE, and I started, one of the first connections I wanted to make was with the Georgia PSC, because ultimately people reach out to me and I'm like, I can't get you certified, but the people that do, I know them and they know me, and building a relationship with the Georgia PSC has been super critical, getting them involved. Then I was sending over Spanish language pathways about how to get certified as a teacher, and they were confirming that. So we built a little graphic that showed the pathway, because one thing I noticed, and just me being honest with the Georgia PSC, sometimes it's not always clear when you go to the Georgia PSC, what's my pathway? And I know that almost everybody's certification journey is almost to some degree, at some level, an individual thing. You know, it's almost, and that's what we learned when we did a program with the other states of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, when we had our Start Talk teacher program, is the first of its kind. ACFL was a partner in that program. So we built personalized learning plans for teachers. So we, as state employees, agreed to partner with us and become personal kind of guidance counselors for people going along the pathway to certification. And what I've learned with that is it does take some individual counseling, but I think it also is about, I think it's also, I'll be honest too, we are in Georgia, right? So my first thing is about Georgia. So I'll be honest, I'm a bit of a pirate. Hey, I make Georgia, we look pretty good, I'll be honest with you. You know what I mean? Hey, we've got grants over here in Georgia. I don't know what your state is offering, but we got grants for it. Hey, we've got dual language immersion stuff. We got professional learning. You know what I think? Professional learning communities that we put in motion a couple years ago, those have been powerful programs that not only helped connect Georgia teachers, but I mean, speaking of my German and Japanese PLCs in particular, we've connected them in those less commonly taught languages all across. And the Arabic Teachers Council that's based here, I think they have done a phenomenal job of connecting the Arabic teaching community as well. All of that plays a part in it. So there's advocacy. We need to grow a new group of teachers, but one thing I want you to know is you're VIPs, right? You really are. And we need to create more language teachers. We have shortages in all 50 states. In Georgia, recently, the governor passed a law that allowed for teachers who are retired to come back to work without the 49% cap on what you can earn in certain selected areas. And in some of those areas, world languages is one of those. I know, when you enter into teaching and you're in that language, you're a very valuable commodity. I'll speak for the rural systems. it's not only about getting a Spanish teacher, but you have to find someone who's good at Spanish and lives in your community. Because they can't, but then we also have to think about virtual with rural too, because a lot of our rural communities, they can't offer upper levels of languages. So that might have to be the virtual connection. And Georgia Virtual is the largest area in Georgia Virtual is world languages. I wonder why. It's because the talent is very hard to find. So making that virtual component. So, we don't have to have a one-size-fits-all approach, but we have to be dynamic. We have to reach outside our language to actually build community partners with, nonprofits that work with the Asian community or work with the Hispanic community. We have to, it's like I go back and say, we can't assume that we have to build pathways to becoming a teacher in more than one language, number one, And I think one of the big obstacles, some of those obstacles we work to overcome, especially for our DLI teachers, is some of the things that are required because of the certification, but not necessarily that stop a really good DLI teacher from getting into the classroom, like the basics math test or whatever it might be, these little things where it's kind of, because it's only in English, sometimes that's an obstacle. So we need to just really be dynamic. And, part of that is as the pressure builds for more teachers, you'll see more and more flexibility, just like we're seeing in the daily advertisements. Not a system I drive by where they're not looking for bus drivers. You know what I mean? So, it's going to be, world language is kind of like that in a way. We are a hard to fill area, but super critical. So.
It is, thank you. And I think the conversation advocacy is really, we could spend more hours on this. There's so many resources. I hope that you have gotten a perspective from, again, the state, university, district as well. But now I'll turn it over to you to see what questions do you have, what specific questions do you have for any of the panelists in terms of how you can support or create advocacy in your district.
Hi, thank you all so much. My name is Sandra Daniel. I'm the Director of Language Program at the Globe Academy. We are a dual language immersion school in DeKalb County. My question is for Dr. Russell. So I was a graduate from Valdosta State, and I had classes with Dr. Luis Bejarano and then also Susan Whaling. Wonderful Spanish teachers there and French teachers as well. So I did both Spanish and French. We had at the time the Migrant for Education program. So I was able to teach ESOL classes in Lowndes County. And I wanted to know, are those types of programs still happening where there's that connection, because that one was actually connecting ESOL with world languages, because we talk a lot about world languages, but there's also that other component. And I think that was really key in getting me to think about, dual language immersion education.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Dr. Bejarano is still there, and Dr. Whaling is still there too. We do so much in the community. Dr. Whaling has a camp program for migrant students that come in over the summer, and our language students are able to help them with their English. So I think these programs have just grown and grown. All of our teacher candidates who are certified in Spanish and French also receive the ESOL endorsement, as do our elementary and middle school educators in different disciplines. So I think it's been around since your time at Valdosta State, but it's grown only stronger, the connections that we have in the community. We also bring in students from local middle schools, and they come in, we have celebrations on like Dia de los Muertos, and they'll come in and they'll make art projects, and we'll play Spanish music, and they'll learn dances. And so we're constantly connecting with the community. We have a language and culture fair. We invite all the local high schools to come to that and their teachers. And also doing a lot of work we have a lot of migrant workers in the area. And so we have dreamers attending our university, students who are, the DACA students. And we have a lot of organizations on campus to support the students who come from the migrant camps. I had a student who, she never graduated high school. She got her GED. She said she learned English because she was in charge of babysitting the children on the migrant camp, and she was watching Barney. She said she learned English from watching Barney. And this woman now has her master's degree, and she is a department head at Coffee County High School. So, it's incredible. Her story to me was absolutely incredible. She said in Mexico she didn't go to school because she couldn't afford shoes. And look how far she has come with education. So we are doing a lot at Valdosta State to help and support the migrant community. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And go Blazers, right? Since you're a Blazer graduate.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a great story. And I think we have time for one more question.
One more, and then we have to move to the next session.
I'm not sure if it's a question or it's like a awareness. I think everybody is aware of AI situation. I think, well, there's a possibility, I don't know, like how do we go ahead of AI? Because I keep hearing students say, oh yeah, they have a translator, you could just speak and it's in real time, you could translate the same language to you. And, like, I don't know if you feel like you were threatened, your job might be in danger. There's a lot of different segment, not just like teacher-wise as a foreign teacher, but there's a lot of different job area. They feel the same way. It's very possible that AI can take over. But I personally think, as a world language teacher, we are very aware of what's the progression of the world and what's going on in technology, and we try to be just dabble a little bit of everything. So how do we be ahead to combine our skill, but not seeing as technology as a threatening thing? So, how do we combine that? I think there's something like we need to think ahead, like how to maximize the technology available in AI and foreign language and development. Did that make any sense? I don't know.
Yes, I wanted to speak to that very quickly. I think at the heart of what we do in world languages is language and communication with other people. We make personal connections. I don't think AI is ever going to replace person-to-person communication or that feeling that you get when you're with a person in another country speaking a different language and developing relationships with that person. AI cannot do that. I fully support students with translators in their pockets when they're traveling to another country and they're stuck and they want to say something and they don't know the word. That's great. That's a language and communication facilitator. I just don't see AI ever replacing human relationships.
And on another note is also the literacy. Like a lot of students possibly utilize the OpenAI to write an essay now. So I think it's okay to think like, okay, we are very valuable, like we have the personal contact with, but I think it's also education general level, like the revolution. It has to be going. You have to go through a revolution and be ahead of what is in front of us. Like, if literacy development, is it necessary? I mean, of course it's necessary, but now we could have a technology to write an essay or coding for us. Like, how do we maximize that? I mean, and then reduce our stress. Like before we have to go to library and search certain material. But now you just could Google it and you know everything. You don't need to memorize anything anymore. So how do we maximize education combined with the changing world of technology? I think that is a common question going through a lot of sectors.
I can speak to that very quickly because I know we're out of time, but ACTFL is collecting the research right now on how language teachers can best use AI, things like ChatGPT, and hopefully we'll have that research ready by this fall. And so they are working on that. But remember, we don't just teach language, we teach language and culture. So the cultural aspect is very important, and I think they're not going to learn that from a computer.
It is, and I think it's a great topic. We have, Culture Atlanta Global Studies Center, maybe could be a topic, for even its own session as well. I know we ran out of time. It's a great topic. I appreciate our panelists. Thank you for your input, feedback. Thank you for your questions as well. I think we can collect additional questions we were not able to get to today, but thank you again for contributing to the topic. Now I'll turn it over to you.
And thank you all. This was a wonderful panel, and I think we will keep this in mind as a future topic. And I love that AI question. That's a perfect one. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our moderator. We still have 2 more sessions, so stick around. But Victoria, thank you so much for joining us from Valdosta.